Okay, here we go on to chapter 2, broker supervision and liabilities. You, my friend, are well on the way to being a Washington State managing broker just like me. We're going to take over the world when we're here. All right, broker supervision and liabilities. The objectives. Upon completion of this section, you should be able to accomplish the following. Identify and compare the difference between supervising independent contractors, employees, desk fee affiliated licensees, home office affiliated licensees, licensed and unlicensed assistants, licensees operating as teams of licensed and or unlicensed individuals, brokers with less than 2 years of experience who have the requirement of heightened supervision. Sorry. Okay. Identify problem areas in reviewing purchase and sale agreements, listings, disclosures, and other transactional documents. You're the one at this point that has to review other people's paperwork. So whatever problems you've had in the past, turning in your paperwork and getting it completed appropriately, this is where you get punished for your lack of professionalism in the past, because now you're in charge of everybody else's too. Describe the authority of a designated broker to delegate duties in writing to managing brokers and branch managers. Describe a managing designated broker's responsibility in handling trust funds and deposits regardless of delegated authorities. Identify procedures to monitor affiliated licensee compliance with fair housing, antitrust, and sexual harassment laws. Identify advertising problem areas relating to Regulation Z and fair housing. That sounds important. Describe the firm designated broker responsibility regarding the display of licenses. Describe the responsibilities of the firm designated broker, managing broker, and the affiliated licensee regarding separation, return of a license. Explain the license activation and renewal process. Explain the Washington Department of Labor and Industry requirements for workers' compensation insurance coverage by real estate brokerage firms. Explain regulations governing identification of the firm in all advertising. Identify required elements of a firm's policy manual, WAC 308, 124C through 125. Sound complicated? Nah. We're going to whip through these 38 pages, no problem, and we're going to be ready to take this test easy peasy, just like that. All right, let's get started. Supervising an independent contractor versus an employee. When working with a brokerage firm, brokers typically operate as independent contractors. That's me. I'm a 1099 girl. An independent contractor is a person who provides services under the terms of a written agreement, a contract. In practice, this indicates a relationship where the independent contractor runs their own business, that's me, and is therefore responsible for work aspects such as setting their own hours. I get up pretty early. I would suggest you do the same. An employee, in contrast, works directly for the firm and would have activities including hours dictated by their employee. That means, like my assistant, hey, be here at 9. Don't be late. Don't forget my coffee. Be on time. Make sure you clean up your workspace when you leave. Make sure you stay till 4. No, you can't use your lunch break as a reason to leave early. Or sure, use your lunch break as a reason to leave early. And yeah, bring coffee for both of us. There's petty cash in your box. Really, I don't mind paying for it. Hey, what's up? Welcome to working for me. That's an employee. There are advantages and disadvantages to being an independent contractor. In addition to the schedule flexibility, another advantage is that independent contractors can include some of their expenses as tax deductions. That's what I really like, because they file as a separate business. That coffee, I'm writing it off because it's a business coffee, and we're going to talk about business while we drink my business coffee. Also, independent contractors can choose how to allocate operating expenses and marketing dollars. Let's spend some money on coffee. Pass out some business cards while you're there. Definitely tax deductible coffee. Just seems right. As always, there's a flip side. While independent contractors gain flexibility, they sacrifice stability. It's true. Every day I wake up unemployed. I don't know who my boss is today. Do I have a new listing? Do I have a new buyer? If I don't, then I'm unemployed for the entire day. How am I going to make this happen? It's really unstable. They do not receive paid vacation. I don't, but I take some great vacations. Health benefits. I could get my own insurance. I have for years. Retirement benefits. I opened an Ameritrade account on my own and I put $50 a week in there, have for years. Guaranteed income. I don't have that. No salary or hourly wage. I sacrifice. Oh, my sacrifice provides a great upside because I'm paid for what I produce. I can work 23 hours a day, and that allows me to make way more money than other people, and nobody controls how much I work and how much I can spend. If you want to be on my team, hit me up, yourhomenw.com. You can come over here and work with me, independent contractor. You make your own money. This sacrifice provides great upsides. It's crucial to be aware of the downsides. Most real estate brokers are independent contractors and not employees of a brokerage. I heard that maybe at Redfin, you're an employee and so you have a guaranteed salary. That's not really what I'm about. I want to make, I don't know, whatever I can. Usually a brokerage will have an independent contractor agreement signed by both designated broker and the broker. And I don't know if that's true. I was just throwing that out there. So that's not me slandering anybody, just in case. Usually a brokerage will have an independent contractor agreement signed by both the designated broker and the broker. The agreement will likely cover some of the following topics: compensation structure, termination policy, costs for the licensee, including desk fees, transaction fees, L&I, types of real estate activities that are permitted, E&O, that's errors and omission insurance, business and occupations tax, and supervision and support from management. I need that. I need people to tell me, hey, Stacey, get your paperwork turned in. Let's look at the example of an independent contractor. Stephen is a real estate broker who has entered into a written contract with his designated broker. The contract specifies that he will not be an employee. He's agreed that his entire income will be based on his sales commission instead of an hourly wage. Stephen's a brave man. Get up early, bro. For tax purposes, an independent contractor will get a 1099 miscellaneous. That's me, 1099 girl. Always have been, always will be. Love it. From the brokerage to report what the brokerage is paid. The independent contractor is then responsible for paying income tax. That's dicey. I need help with that. If you need a tax professional, I got some good ones. The business does not withhold taxes, and therefore the independent contractor should make estimated tax payments during the year to cover tax liabilities. Do that. Every quarter, send in some money. If you get money back, what's the downside to that? Criteria for the IRS. The distinction between independent contractor and employee is important for federal income tax purposes. They've got like some criteria that you need to know so you can decide if you're 1099 or W-2. Behavioral control. These facts show whether there's a right to direct or control how the worker does the work. A worker is an employee when the business has the right to direct and control the worker. The business does not have to actually control the way the work is done, as long as the employer has the right to direct and control the work. For example, if you receive extensive instructions on how work is to be done, this suggests you're an employee. Instructions can cover a wide range: how, when, and where you do the work, what tools you use, what assistants to hire to help you do the work, where to purchase supplies and services. If you receive less extensive instructions, then you're probably an independent contractor. Training. If the business provides you with training about required procedures and methods, this sounds like an employee. Financial control. These facts show whether there's a right to direct or control the business part of the work. For example, significant investment. If you have a significant investment in your work, you're probably an independent contractor. If you are not reimbursed for some of or all of your business expenses, you're probably an independent contractor. If you can realize a profit or incur a loss, you're probably an independent contractor. Relationship of the parties. These are the facts that illustrate how the business and the worker perceive the relationship. Employee benefits. If you receive benefits such as insurance, pension, or paid leave, you're an employee. If you did not receive benefits, however, you could be either an employee or an independent contractor. Written contracts. A written contract may show that you and the business intend. This may be very significant if it is difficult, if not impossible, to determine status based on other facts. Supervising desk fee brokers. Some real estate licensees pay their broker a desk fee when their designated broker agrees to give the real estate broker 100% of their commission. So I pay you $100 a month every month, and I get to keep whatever I make. Desk fees vary, but they're generally a flat fee. They also will charge E&O. They'll charge by the transaction. Here it is. You're responsible for paying additional expenses, photocopies, long distance calls, marketing materials. What else? Those other things I said, stuff like that. Supervising home office affiliated licensees. Many affiliates choose to work from a home office. I've been doing that since the pandemic started. I used to have an office. Now I work from home. Some brokerages charge a lesser fee or better commission split if they do not provide a desk or an office to the affiliate. The affiliate usually visits the office to turn in paperwork, obtain marketing material, and attend meetings. I come in like once a year. Managers must be sure that they are still supervising these individuals, even though the affiliates are not in the office. I come in about once a year so my boss can talk to me about turning paperwork in on time. Communication via email, phone, and fax is essential between the two. The requirement to review paperwork and to maintain office policies is no different for those brokers operating on a desk fee, those on a commission split, and those in a home office. The procedure may be different, video conferencing, things like that, but my designated broker still has to make sure that I'm adhering to all the policies that everybody else does. Unlicensed assistants are typically employees and not independent contractors because the hiring party usually dictates a higher level of behavioral control. What time you're going to get here, what you're going to do, the activities, things like that. And it can be extremely valuable to a brokerage firm and even high-performing individual brokers to employ an unlicensed assistant to handle many of the things that are time-consuming but do not represent revenue-generating activities. It's tempting to involve unlicensed assistants in a lot of activities, but they are not licensed to practice real estate brokerage. Do not mess this up. So they're legally limited in what they can do. The list of things that they can do is quite extensive. Let's take a look at the list of what they cannot do. They can't show properties. They can't interpret information relating to a transaction. They can't fill in legal forms or negotiate price or terms. They can't hold or disperse trust funds. They can't perform any act with the intent to circumvent, hey puppies, come on, or that results in the circumvention of real estate licensing law. To hear this little puppy fights, it's adorable. Unlicensed assistants are allowed to do the following. They can provide information about the characteristics of a real estate listing. They can pick up, deliver documents and keys. They can follow up on loan commitments. They can write and place advertising. They can gather market analysis information. They can perform normal clerical duties. They can transport people around. They can obtain any public information. They can make keys, install lock boxes, greet people. They can submit forms. They can check on the progress of loans. They can receive rent payments. They can record and deposit earnest money. They can order or perform repairs or maintenance. They can conduct telemarketing or phone canvassing. Their compensation is not conditioned upon receipt of compensation by the licensee, and they do not provide any brokerage services. They just can't be realtors. Including the activities the assistant will be performing in a job description is important to set expectations from the very beginning. It's also important to make sure that the assistant is aware of the activities that they are prohibited from performing. That sounds right. Licensed assistants have different rules regarding their activities. Their license means that they can perform all the activities associated with a real estate broker. Supervising teams of unlicensed or licensed individuals. A very popular real estate business model is the team concept. I love that. An example would be a group of affiliates working together. We benefit each other. I don't like working with buyers. Lots of people don't like working with listings. The designated broker is still responsible for supervising the team. If a team member is operating as a supervisor, they must have a managing broker's license and an agreement with the designated broker defining their duties in writing, dated and signed by both parties. The team within a brokerage may even have its own individual name, its assumed team name. Even if the team has an assumed name, the name of the brokerage as licensed, must also appear on all advertising, business cards, marketing materials, etc. It is the responsibility of the designated broker or assigned managing broker to ensure that the team complies with all marketing regulations that require the brokerage name to be clearly stated. That's a big deal. Supervision of brokers with less than 2 years. Brokers with less than 2 years are subject to a heightened degree of supervision, which includes participating in all required reviews by the designated broker or appointed managing broker, submitting evidence of completion of department required clock hour education, securing advice or assistance from the designated broker or appointed managing broker. The last of the requirements on this list actually applies to all brokers. A broker should always refer a client to an expert in the field rather than operate outside their area of expertise. Home inspections, appraisals, and the law. If a broker is selling a property that has a foundation that appears to be cracked, the broker must refer the client to the proper professional licensed to handle the situation, structural engineer or building contractor. The guidance required for those under 2 years of experience is to make sure the public is receiving quality brokerage services and being properly represented. Note, for the role of managing broker or designated broker, state law is almost always written to accomplish the protection of the public. If you do not know if something is correct or not on a test, the option that provides protection to the public is a good choice. Problem areas in reviewing transaction documents. This is a big deal. Okay, so this is us. We're going for the managing brokers test. As a managing broker, reviewing documents is very important. Okay. The legal documents that brokers sign and fill in are binding and could lead to a lawsuit. Many legal issues can be avoided by a thorough review of the documentation created by the brokers. State law requires all documents for the transaction to be delivered to the brokerage firm by the managing broker or broker within 2 business days of mutual agreement. Okay, so there's the first thing. Your people, you're the managing broker, need to turn in their paperwork within 2 days. If they're not doing that, that's a problem. As a supervisor, you'll need to review the documents to make sure they're in compliance with the laws. You can come in, you're fine. Through the review process, you will also see what common mistakes your brokers are making. It is important to keep all brokers up to date with common issues you see to improve the quality of contracts they produce over time. That's me. My boss, for quite some time now, has to be like, hey, did you turn your paperwork in within 2 days to verify that I'm doing it? And so it's something that I work really hard to try and stay on top of. On a management note, it is best to not include any names of the brokers making mistakes, but simply to use general terms. I've seen this come up recently, or a common situation to avoid is what Stacy does. When informing other brokers of common mistakes and situations to watch for, the brokerage must require that all real estate service paperwork be submitted to the brokerage in a timely manner. It needs to be very clear for brokers how and when they are to submit paperwork for review. Putting systems in place for consistency is key to avoiding missing paperwork. A list can be obtained from the MLS listings for each brokerage. This can be compared to the list files of the brokerage to determine which files are missing. An audit of this type should be performed frequently to maintain compliance, and if it is a great risk, establishing a management technique. For protection or for purchase and sale agreements and other documents, a brokerage can have a more difficult time identifying paperwork files that are missing and have not been submitted. It is essential that a brokerage has written policies about the submittal of paperwork and also enforces those specified policies. Without enforcement, maintaining standards becomes very difficult. Sorry, I was having a little trouble because I'm looking at those puppies back there. Yeah, so cute. Also, following clear policies ensures that brokerages are not upset about favoritism through uneven enforcement. Consistency is crucial in any management policy. Required signatures and initials. All signatures and initials must be included on the document as required. A purchase and sale agreement must be signed by all parties intending to hold title to the property and by all persons who own the property. A listing agreement must be signed by all owners. Transactions involving a personal representative or power of attorney must be signed by the authorized individual, and documentation that the individual has authorization must be included. All parties must initial any change to the original document. A managing broker must also check that all required addenda are attached. For certain real estate transactions, there could be addenda. A transaction file is not considered complete unless all required addenda are included. Example, a seller's disclosure statement is required for listings. Bill, a broker for XYZ real estate investors, had a listing for some vacant land that was zoned for residential use. He had his seller fill out a seller's disclosure statement for improved property instead of the one for unimproved property. Bill needs to go back to the seller and have the seller fill out the correct form. Filling paperwork out correctly. All blanks should either be filled in or lined through on pre-printed forms. Here are some common mistakes made by licensees. Okay, so these are common, so we want to watch for these. Filling out a seller's disclosure statement for the seller. That's fraud. You can't do that. Taking a quick look at the writing styles of the broker and the form will help identify possible fraud. Errors regarding commissions, such as total commission versus selling office commission, a mistake often made by new licensees. It can be very costly to the brokerage. Making sure that there is a seller's disclosure statement, even when the seller has not lived on the property, and also making sure that the statement has a buyer's signature. I think I need to do that on one of my transactions. Making changes to a listing without using a listing change form signed by the seller. Looking at the change history of a listing in the MLS will indicate all changes made, which needs to be accompanied by properly signed and dated paperwork. Canceling a listing with a designated broker's signature. All listings are owned by the brokerage. Errors inputting a listing and not editing the listing once it is complete. Specifying a closing date that falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, as the transaction cannot be recorded on those dates. The contract will usually include language to state that the transaction will close on the next business day. However, the client may not be happy if they're not alerted to the date being on a weekend or a holiday. Come on. Drafting their own purchase and sale agreement, practicing law without being an attorney. I've never even seen that one. Not getting the proper documentation for authorized signatures. Power of attorney. I have that going on right now, I just realized. Personal representative of the estate. Proof of authorization to sign when a corporation is listing a property. Okay, so out of this stuff, on one of my listings that I have right now, it's an estate sale. So apparently I need to get a Form 17 and I need to have the executor sign it. And then I haven't done any of that other stuff, but apparently I need to get a copy of the paperwork that says that the executor has the right to sell the property. So I need to get those tonight. And so my next move on this would be to jot this down on something. I send myself a text. So what I would do in this situation is I would text my assistant. I need a Form 17 and a copy of the executive agreement for Oaks. Please remind me. Okay, that's how you handle real estate. You make sure that you do it in the moment because there's a lot of stuff. Incomplete documentation. Occasionally, a broker may attach an incomplete file in their email and not clearly scan all documentation. Both the licensee and manager must take care to make sure all paperwork is complete and nothing has been excluded. Check your paperwork. Disclosure of a broker as a principal. If you're a principal, you need to tell people. When a licensee is a principal, an owner or a purchaser in a transaction, this information must be disclosed in writing to all parties. Failure to disclose this is a violation of licensing law. Yeah, that's going to get you in some trouble. While E&O insurance policies are not required by law, many brokerages choose to carry them. Many of these insurance policies have certain restrictions when a licensee is a principal in a transaction. Some policies exclude the licensee as a principal altogether. As stated above, the licensee must disclose this fact in writing, and the brokerage must be aware of the situation where the licensee is always the principal. So my boss cares if I'm on a purchase and sale as a seller. Got it. Lack of legal description. A transaction can become voidable if the legal description is not attached to a listing or a purchase and sale. The legal description should be a full description from the last deed and can be obtained by the title company. The legal description should be attached as an exhibit and not written in by hand to avoid possible errors. Errors and time limits. If there is a contingency in a contract, a contingency expiration date must be stated. An offer is contingent upon the buyer obtaining financing. The financing contingency must have a time limit. Procedures. Each brokerage should have written procedures for submitting paperwork so that the licensee knows what to expect. Mine's 2 days, but the licensee and the manager should use a sheet with a checklist. We do. Trust fund management. The management of the trust fund and handling of client funds is the responsibility of the designated broker. We don't have one at my office. The designated broker can delegate managing the trust account to a managing broker, provided there is a written agreement placed between the designated broker and the managing broker assigning those responsibilities. Ultimate responsibility rests on the designated broker. Trust accounts handling is not the only responsibility a designated broker is allowed to delegate. Delegated or retained responsibilities. The following items, so as the designated broker, these are some of the things you can delegate. They can be delegated to licensed managing brokers within the firm only. And anytime there's an oversight of other licensees, a managing broker's license is required. Even teams with a supervisor are required to have a managing broker in charge with a written agreement of responsibilities from the designated broker. They require any delegated responsibilities to be in writing, kept on record, and signed by both the designated broker and the managing broker. The designated broker retains the ultimate responsibility for these. So it's like the managing broker is a sub-agent of the designated broker, just like as brokers we're sub-agents, I guess, of the same designated broker. Let's examine the items that a designated broker is responsible for and can delegate. Monthly reconciliation of the trust account. Monthly trial balances are completed, accurate, and up to date. Trial balance and reconciliation show the account is in balance. Policies or procedures are in place to account for safe handling of customer or client funds. Safe handling of customer funds. Required records are maintained and up to date. Accessibility of the firm's office and records is provided to the director's authorized representative, and it's ensured that copies of required records are made available. Management oversight. Assuring all real estate brokerage services comply with state laws, rules, and regulations for an affiliated licensee, broker, managing broker, or branch manager. Assuring all persons employed, contracted, or representing the firm have delegated authority to supervise and are appropriately licensed. Hiring, transferring, and releasing licensees to and from the branch. Overseeing all activity within the office, including supervision of brokers and managing brokers, and heightened supervision of brokers for license for less than 2 years. Assuring all affiliated licensees are following the designated broker's written policy. Assuring all advertising is proper and legal. Obtaining E&O insurance, not required by Washington state law. Assuring all brokerage service contracts are modified or terminated appropriately on behalf of the firm. Assuring all brokers and managing brokers submit their transaction documents to the designated broker or delegated managing broker within 2 business days of mutual acceptance. Performing timely review of contract. Assuring a review of all brokerage service contracts involving any broker licensed for less than 2 years. Undertaking proper and adequate supervision of brokers and managing brokers and heightened supervision of brokers that are licensed for less than 2 years. In the event there are errors made by brokers or the managing broker who was assigned oversight of the firm made a good decision to carry E&O insurance with the risk factors, it is on the rise. Carry the insurance, just have the insurance. Designated brokers managing multiple firms. While designated brokers may hold a license as a managing broker and have a controlling interest in the firm, they are also allowed to perform as the designated broker for more than one firm. That makes sense. I think my boss, I think he has a boss, and I think the guy that's his boss is like the designated broker for like 3 offices, whereas I think my boss is the managing broker for 2 offices. The requirement for the designated broker to hold a controlling interest in the firm remains for all firms which they act as the designated broker. If a managing broker accepts endorsements from other firms as their designated broker, they must notify the DOL of the additional firms for which they will serve as a designated broker. The DOL will provide a printed endorsement on their managing broker's license indicating the names of all firms for which they are the designated broker. Designated broker vacation. The designated broker really does not need to do anything if they're going on an extended vacation, but they are responsible for any and all real estate activity in the office. Usually they assign the managing broker to take care of stuff. Other designated broker responsibilities. Closing the firm, writing a policy manual, and having that for all brokers and managing brokers. A designated broker who needs to handle closing the firm if it happens within 5 business days, the designated broker must do the following. Provide the department with a closing firm affidavit. Ensure that all brokerage service contracts are either terminated or transferred to another licensed real estate firm. Notify all parties to a pending brokerage service transaction that the firm's closing. Transfer the pending transaction documents with the party's written authorization to another firm. Ensure the transactions are completed without any new licensable activity. Management and compliant. Maintaining, implementing, and following a written policy, office policy manual that addresses the following. Procedures for referring a home inspector or other referrals. The policy will address the consumer's right to freely pick a home inspector of the buyer's or seller's choice and to prevent any collusion between the home inspector and a licensee. The licensee refers a home inspector with who they have a relationship, like family, then full disclosure has to come out. Levels of supervision of all brokers, managing brokers, and branch managers. Review of all brokerage service contracts involving any broker licensed for less than 2 years. Note, the above states the minimum requirements contained in a policy manual. Brokerages may find it very beneficial to include a whole host of other policies for their affiliates. Having policies in writing is a sound practice for all brokerages, and these can be referred to if an issue arises. That sounds smart. Compliance. Brokers should have a firm understanding of the fair housing, antitrust, and sexual harassment laws and know who can file a complaint and the penalties. For violations, a brokerage can assist by establishing a complaint procedure, having a policy manual to address these issues, education and training for all managers and the affiliates to avoid complaints, reviewing transaction paperwork carefully to monitor compliance, notifying employees of their rights, encouraging affiliates to report any violations, investigating all complaints as soon as possible, holding a meeting on these topics, and bringing in guest speakers who specialize in these areas. When educating and reminding brokers of their responsibilities, a review of sexual harassment law is particularly useful, especially when, as a managing broker, you are tasked with not only following it yourself, but ensuring that it is followed by brokers whom you supervise. Just don't sexually harass each other. Sexual harassment. According to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, sexual harassment includes unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment can include jokes, inappropriate photographs and videos, inappropriate language, and unwelcome physical contact. This is the federal definition. When submission to such conduct is made, either explicitly or implicitly, a term or condition of an individual's employment, or when submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as a basis for employment decisions affecting such individuals, quid pro quo harassment, or when such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's right performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. Hostile work environment harassment. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is the federal agency that enforces the federal law. Washington state statutes against sexual discrimination in employment are contained in Chapter 49.6 RCW, which also includes sexual harassment. This code establishes the Human Rights Commission and defines conduct that constitutes harassment for employers. RCW 49.6.180 establishes a legal right for an employee to sue an employer for hostile work environment sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a very serious and should be dealt with just as seriously. It's true, it's happened to me. It is necessary to establish a policy and procedures such as the following: making clear who is in charge of overseeing the policy and procedures and ensuring that it is a senior person with a level of authority. Training all managing brokers and supervisors on how to recognize sexual harassment. Annually training brokers as well. Communicating your reporting procedures should anyone feel that they are subjected to sexual harassment or have witnessed it in the workplace. Making clear that sexual harassment will not be allowed and that anyone committing sexual harassment will be subject to discipline and even dismissal. Establishing a clear confidential reporting procedure and investigating any and all complaints. Making sure the policy applies to everyone in the organization and disciplining them according to your pre-established guidelines. Given the legal liability of sexual harassment, it is in the firm's best interest to consult with a lawyer when dealing with issues to ensure compliance with appropriate laws. It is also important that even as you enforce strict policies, you make sure that the dismissal is not handled incorrectly so as to subject the brokerage to other potential liabilities. Sexual harassment, when that happens, it becomes a big deal. Any kind of discrimination is a pretty big deal. And so you want to have policies and procedures in place for how people treat each other, how they interact, and how once something has come to the surface that there's a problem, how both parties are handled to make sure that neither party is getting persecuted. The Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z. This is a big deal on the test. Pay attention to this. All of this stuff in what we're reading right now is a pretty big deal on the test. Hold on one second. Okay. The Truth in Lending Act, TILA. So you need to remember this. Truth in Lending Act is also Regulation Z, and it stands for TILA, Truth in Lending Act. You will need to know this. This is a law designed to protect the public as it relates to consumer credit. So TILA is credit. Credit is TILA. Got it? Just try and make that come together in your head so you remember. The main purpose of the TILA is to make clear all the costs and fees associated with loans in a standardized format and with required disclosures. Consumer loans are for personal, family, or household use. Essentially, transparency in lending is what this is all about. For a brokerage firm, the issues with advertising arise when a broker or firm may offer advertising along with a mortgage broker or banker or mention any financing option in ads when advertising directly to a consumer. There are rules that must be followed. If a lender advertises directly to a consumer, TILA requires the advertisement to disclose the credit terms and the interest rate. If an advertisement states specific credit terms, it may list only those terms that are actually offered by the lender. If an advertisement shows the rate of interest, it has to be as an annual percentage rate, APR, using that term. If the APR is increased after consummation, the advertisement must state that fact. The advertisement may not state any other rate, except a simple annual rate or periodic rate that is applied to an unpaid balance. This may be stated in conjunction with, but cannot stand out more than the annual percentage rate. It is best the ads are separate or run by a mortgage broker to ensure compliance with all lending requirements. Regulations do not stop at advertising, but involve the entire lending process. Fair housing. Just as with Regulation Z, brokerages are at risk of violating fair housing law when advertising. Discrimination is illegal when providing or advertising brokerage services. The law protects people according to the following classes: race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, familial status, age, and marital status. These categories, also referred to as protected classes, the laws apply to any party involved directly or indirectly in a housing transaction, such as the sale, rental, or financing of housing. These include landlords, property managers, real estate brokers, appraisers, and mortgage lenders. Local government and public agency policies and procedures are also governed. Any advertising expressing desirability based on national origin or any other protected class is deemed a violation of the fair housing law. Fair housing laws apply to all types of advertising or marketing used in home sales and purchases, including ads in newspapers, on the radio, in magazines, on the internet, or on television. There are no federal regulations regarding advertising, although the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has provided guidelines on flyers or even in comments for a listing on the MLS. So there's no guidelines in flyers or the MLS, but there are for newspapers, radio, magazines, the internet, or television. The internet would include social media. And so don't discriminate. You'll be sorry. Mark, a broker with ABC Real Estate, had a listing with The Sims. He placed an advertisement in the newspaper for their property, saying that the property was in a great Jewish neighborhood and invited all Jewish people to view the home. This is a violation of discrimination in advertising based on national origin. Come on, what were you thinking, Mark? Get it together. Brokerages should make sure brokers are well educated on the protected classes. For real, you want to know. Do not discriminate and sexually harass people, and know your protected classes. Who were your protected classes again? Race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, familial status, age, marital status. Everyone. Got it. Don't discriminate against anybody. Got it? Everyone. Just be fair. Brokerages should make sure that their brokers are well educated and how to write advertisements that do not violate fair housing laws. Management should review any advertising to ensure compliance. It's important to read all the advertising, especially when contracting outside parties, marketing firms, or web designers. For real. Do you remember that there was a big deal with Disney and the Little Mermaid cover? Yeah, that was quite a problem. With the proliferation of content available, it's critical that the firm set clear policies for reviewing materials. Look at what you're writing. Don't just put it out there. Just as for other companies, violation of fair housing laws should carry clear and consistent discipline. Okay, got it. Here's the next one. Can-Spam Act. The Can-Spam Act created a specific rule regarding the use of advertising in a commercial context. Violations are stiff if the law is not followed. Stiff. Got it? It gives the recipient the option to stop receiving messages. And sets timelines for how quickly businesses or individuals have to meet the request to terminate any additional advertising messages. It is most commonly known as a law to prevent email spam, but it's broader than that. For example, it covers former customers receiving email telling them about a new service the business has provided. The law defines the scope as any electronic mail message where the primary purpose of which is the commercial advertisement or promotion of a commercial product or service. It's important for brokers to be keenly aware of the messages that fall under this law, given how they like to keep in touch with former clients and obtain new customers. Punishments are severe. Each violation is subjected to a fine of $16,000. Hold on, what's up? What dog? I don't know. One of those puppies is missing. Maybe my boyfriend took him with him. Yeah. Okay. So punishments are severe. Each violation is subjected to a fine of $16,000. The law considers each email a separate violation, so the penalties can escalate quickly. Let's take a look at the key components of the law. Who the email is from and who it is to must be clear and correct. No misleading information is allowed, such as making it appear to be from another party. The subject of the message must be clear and accurate. It must be clearly stated that the message is an advertisement. There is some freedom in how this is accomplished, but it must be clear and obvious. The message must display the business's or individual's physical address. A P.O. box is acceptable if registered to the business for commercial purposes. There must be a clear opt-out option in the message. The opt-out system can allow them to opt out of specific types of messages, but always must include the option to stop all commercial messages. Any opt-out must be able to work at least 30 days after email was sent, and opt-outs must be honored within 10 business days. It can't cost any money to opt out or ask them for information. Also, it cannot be complicated. Businesses and individuals are responsible for messages they send and those they send on behalf of others. Also, any message sent on behalf of businesses or individuals doesn't remove liability. Businesses and individuals are responsible for messages sent on their behalf. Ooh, wow, that's a big deal. I don't do any email advertising, but it sounds real scandalous. Do not call registry. The National Do Not Call Registry gives the public a choice about whether to receive telemarketing calls at home. Telemarketers should not call a number once it has been on the registry for 31 days. Registration of a home or full mobile number is free. Identifying the advertiser. Washington law requires any advertising to include the firm's name or assumed name. Also, advertising has to be clear, honest, and not misleading. Licensees have to be sure their websites and other advertising are in compliance. If they are unbranded, they can be disciplined by the Department of Licensing. Not only is the licensee subjected to discipline, the designated broker or managing broker who has been delegated responsibility, and even the firm may also be liable. Remember, all licensees are responsible for assuring that advertising is lawful, and it is the designated broker's responsibility to ensure the licensees are doing that. The only exception with respect to publishing the firm's name is if the real estate brokers, managing brokers, or firms are advertising their own property. Okay, got it. Any advertising online or elsewhere must include the firm's name or assumed name. Is that my firm or my broker's firm? I think that has to include my broker's firm. If a broker or managing broker is using a brand that is not an assumed name, they must clearly display the firm's name. Ensure that that name or brand cannot give the impression that it is its own company, such as including LLC or Inc., or making the name sound like a firm, such as Realtors or Realty. Obtain written approval from the designated broker to use the unlicensed brand name. The Washington Real Estate Commission provided the following guidelines regarding advertising via social media or online. Good, we need to know these. Online advertising. Failing to include the firm's name would be an advertising violation, but a website URL is an internet address and not considered advertising. Once the website loads, however, the firm's name or assumed name must be shown clearly. So that means I have to have on my advertising my broker's company's name, even though I have my own team operating underneath my broker. Email, newsgroup, discussion list, bulletin boards. Disclosure of the licensee's name, the firm's name, or assumed name must be at the start or end of each publication. This disclosure is not required if the licensee already met the disclosure requirements in the first communication with the potential client. They do not have to continue to display the information in subsequent messages that are replying to the customer responses. And that was for emails, news groups, discussion lists, bulletin boards. Instant messages. Full disclosure is not necessary in this format if the licensed entity provided the written full disclosure via another format, email, letter, blah, blah, blah. Chat sessions. Disclosure prior to providing or offering to provide licensable services must be made during the chat session or in text visible on the same web page that contains the chat session. Social media. Full disclosure should be prominently displayed, easily understood, and no more than one click away from the viewable page. Each real estate firm should have and maintain a written policy describing its licensee's use of social media. Facebook, that sounds like a big deal. Multimedia advertising. Full disclosure should be visible as part of the advertising message. Banner ads. These ads should link to a website that has full disclosure that is a single click away from the viewable page unless the banner ad has such full disclosure. Online prospecting. The Real Estate Commission provides additional guidelines for procuring clients online because it is an area fraught with potential problems. Websites that display available properties and are maintained by either the firm or an individual broker must make sure that expired listings are removed promptly. If the licensee lists or displays information on a third-party website, they need to notify the publisher of any changes promptly. Licensees should not appear to be offering brokerage services in locations where they are not licensed. Ooh, that's a big one right there. Licensees should not appear to be offering brokerage services in locations where they're not licensed. So don't advertise that you're selling real estate in a place you don't have a real estate license, like Eastern Washington. Harsh. Any advertising of other firms' listings should be done only with their written consent. Meta tags are descriptive words hidden in a website's HTML code that search engines use to index the website. Some website owners have also inserted their competitor name in their web meta tags. That's smart. So that when a potential customer searches for their site, the competitor's site will also come up as a match. This should not be done, as the courts have ruled that this constitutes trademark infringement. I need to study meta tags. Licensees must periodically review the advertising and marketing information on their website and update it to assure information is current and not misleading. Wow, that was a lot. And going back to the very beginning part of that, this is called the Can-Spam Act, which led into all of this. But the Can-Spam one, I think, was for emails, for opting out. Required elements of a firm's policy manual, management and compliance. Maintaining, implementing, and following a written office policy manual that addresses the following: procedures for referring a home inspector, levels of supervision of all brokers, review of all brokerage service contracts, including any broker less than 2 years. The above states the minimum requirements contained in a policy manual. So those are the minimum requirements contained in a policy manual are maintaining, implementing, and having an office policy manual that covers procedures for referrals, level of supervision of all brokers, and review of all brokerage service contracts of brokers with less than 2 years. Requirements to maintain a license. The license activation and renewal process. What is it?
Are you recording all this?
Yeah, I'm live right now. Yeah, we're famous. We're on the YouTube right now. I appreciate you. Hey, this is Kyle. Kyle, can you lean in the camera for a second? Come on, Kyle. So this is my brother, and he owns Garden of Eden Landscaping, and he's fixing my light switch right now. If you need any landscaping done, we're in Everett, Washington. He does Snohomish County landscaping, and he does fences. Garden of Eden, $30 mows. We do fences. That's his slogan. Okay, the license activation and renewal process. A few months before your license renewal, the DOL will send you a notice to review and continuing education course verification card. You have to tell them your course number, the sponsor number, the date that the course was taken, the course clock hours, the course title, and the course number. Payment for renewal should be included. Continuing education requirements for all Washington licensees. All licensees are required to renew their license every 2 years from the date of issuance. Okay, you need to know that for the test, okay? So every 2 years from the date of issuance. Those licensed prior to 2010 renew on their birthday, while those licensed after that point renew after the date of their initial licensing. I didn't know that. Mine's my birthday. Brokers renewed for the first time after required to complete the 90 clock hours of education, specifically 30 of advanced practices, 30 of real estate law, and 30 of electives from either, and 3 hours of core. All other license renewals, managing broker, or designated, are required to do 30 hours, including 3 core hours, and pay the licensing fee. So brokers renewing for the first time are required to complete 90 hours, 30 of advanced practices, 30 of real estate law, and 30 of electives. You're going to need to know that for the test. So people renewing for the first time have to do 90 hours. The rest of us only do 30. And our 30 are from continuing ed and 3 hours of core. The core can be either residential or commercial core. Core is the common term used to describe current issues in Washington real estate. Yeah, okay. None of that stands for core, but sure. Which is now every 2 years based on curriculum set by the state covering topics that are currently important to real estate brokers. Licenses issued to corporations and partnerships expire every 2 years from the date of issuance. In the state of Washington, even continuing ed instructors are not given a waiver for classes they teach. So even those guys teaching classes don't get a waiver. They have to do it every 2 years. The educators are required to complete their clock hours along with all the other licensees. Note, a common misconception among brokers is that continuing ed is different for those with managing brokers licenses, when in fact, the continuing ed is the same as for a broker. Okay? So every 2 years, 30 hours, 3 hours of core. Don't screw this up. And if it was before 2010, then it's your birthday. If it was after 10, it's when you got licensed. And if it's a first-time licensee, 90 hours. Got it? You're totally going to pass this test. License expiration. Licensees are responsible for renewing their license in a timely manner. Ugh, always such a chore. After decades, just do your hours early on so that you have them stacked up. A few months before expiration, they'll send you a card. Brokerage change of location. A designated broker, managing broker, or firm shall give notice in writing to the director, that's the DOL, the director, of any change of their business or records depository location. Upon the surrender of the original license for the business and payment of a fee as prescribed by the DOL, the director will issue a new license covering the new location. Got it? Any inactive licenses. Any licensee can deliver a license in good standing, not revoked, to the director requesting inactive status. You can inactivate your license. To reinstate the license from inactive to active, completion of an application as provided by the director is required. If you have an inactive license for more than 3 years, you must show proof of completing your 30 clock hours. You can't get out of your continuing ed by inactivating your license. Termination with a firm. Brokers and managing brokers must submit written notification to the designated broker of their firm when they terminate their affiliation. If the managing broker initiates the termination, the written notice should be given to the licensee. The firm, through the designated broker, shall give notice to the director, and such notice shall be accompanied by and include the surrender of the broker's or managing broker's license. So they need to send that back promptly. All listings and the associated commission of the licensee belong to the brokerage. The licensee will need to obtain permission from the designated broker to take any of their listings to their new brokerage. The broker needs to have all of the licenses, the designated broker needs to have all the licenses up and visible. So clear display of the licenses of the firm and its licensees. The licenses cannot be at a main office if the branch or broker is at a different location. Have the license where they are. Workers' comp insurance coverage. In Washington State, brokers are required to provide workers' comp insurance through either the state or self-insurance. Worker comp is handled by the Washington State DOL or LNI, Department of Labor and Industries. And the workers' comp is a tool which LNI use to collect loss information for each industry they insure. Did you guys see that light flashing too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
We need to, shut it down.
This loss information is used to establish premium rates that employers in each industry will pay for their workers' compensation insurance. I feel like you guys should turn the breaker off before you keep messing with
I don't
that.
know if it'll set your.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut that stuff off.
Oh, okay. Let me see how many pages are left. I'm on page 26. I bet maybe I could do a pause. I got to do a pause. Sorry.